That's right. Like I told y'all in Jaw Jacking, I'm here. My name is Eric Taylor. I am guest hosting in for Dr. Gerald Auger, which is on, I think, is trapped inside of a mountain currently and unable to receive any sort of bat signal communications or anything. So I just did what I do. I just played the old intro, little flashback. It is a Simply Cyber podcast. And today we are going to be joined by the one and only Ryan Yager. He is going to be educating us all on some eye-opening information around Active Directory security and Bloodhound, really from a red team perspective. Ryan also is a fellow Marine. He served in the 20 years in the United States Marine Corps and is currently working as a red team engineer. He's going to really bring some unique perspectives on offensive security operation and provide some valuable insight on how attackers really think and operate. And like we were talking about in Jaw Jacking earlier this morning, you know, blue teamers need to know how to do this. And I know Bloodhound is a very useful tool. You can be able to run this stuff, be able to see what the logs are being generated, curate your audit logs, things of that nature. So that way you can be able to detect the things that Ryan is going to be showing about. And this is a precursor to a class that is being dropped in the Simply Cyber Academy. So you're going to get a little snippet. Ryan told me it is public right now, and they will be pushing it out a little bit later. They're reworking a couple of the videos, so this you're getting the on the edge front seat view of this class from Ryan. So at the end we will have a Q&A and go through any of that. So if Ryan gets knee deep in the weeds, like I know a lot of us in the industry do, don't worry. I am monitoring in the background. Please put that Q colon so that way I can quickly find it, pin it. Once we get toward the end and there is bandwidth allowed, we will do a Q&A for everything. So don't be disheartened. We will do the traditional jaw jacking style for that. And without further ado, let's open this thing up to Ryan and let him get started. What's going on, Ryan? You doing all right?
Yeah, I'm doing good. How's everyone else doing?
Doing well, doing
Good.
well. You ready to kick off this lunch and learn?
I am. Should be
Awesome.
a good time.
Awesome, man. I'm going to give the floor to you and bring up your screen. Take care, all.
Awesome. All right. So we're like Eric said, we're going to talk about Bloodhound today. First couple things with Bloodhound, right? What it is not. Okay. Before we even begin typing things like that, Bloodhound does not automatically, pretty much execute things. Okay. It's not going to automatically exploit things within Active Directory or anything like that. It uses something called ingesters. Those ingesters you usually hear about, they're called Bloodhound Python, right? That's one of the ingesters. Sharphound's an ingester for it. And those ingesters use LDAP queries, and they get information from those LDAP queries and then put them into a file, right? Those different JSON files. And then from there, Bloodhound can then show us a graphical interface of those JSON files. You could technically, just did this the other day actually, just look through the JSON files themselves and start to try to create an attack path. Had to do that the other day because it wasn't on there yet. So what's for lunch? I already ate lunch. I had a late breakfast, so it was eggs and stuff like that. But yeah, you can look through just the JSON files and have that right ready to go with stuff. But obviously Bloodhound puts in that graphical interface. It's good, just like Eric was saying, for both blue and red teamers, right? So blue teamers can see a graphical interface of all their stuff, what it's actually doing, what different discretionary access control lists there are between users and groups and things that they may have forgotten about and stuff, right? So they can see all those things like right there. It's good for red teamers because now we get to see it in a graph interface. We get to see that graph and everything. And there's also a tool, if you didn't know, called Bluehound, which is like a Bloodhound for blue teams. Really good tool, super easy to use. Just load it right up on Linux and you can start running Bluehound there. So let's go ahead. Just want to make sure that everyone can see my screen first. So if anyone could throw in the chat that, yeah, they can see this Kali screen like real quick, that'll be great. Doing like an LS Tac LA. Oh, we're just going to go with y'all can see it, hopefully. So we're just going to go ahead and we'll kick this off, right? So as you can see, I don't have anything up and running yet. I do have a domain controller sitting over here. All right. Within this machine here, it's called the Bloodhound domain controller there. And from here, what we can do is we can go ahead and we can run Bloodhound Python, right? We're going to pretend like we already have a user, okay? If you want to get a user, we can get one with Azure App Roasting. That's fine. But we're going to pretend like we already have a user, so we're doing like an assumed breach type of scenario. All right, so let's go ahead and first make sure that user can even log in. So we'll do an exe smb simply.cyber attack you, and our user that we got creds for is alice.wonderland. And we can see that we can log in, right? We know that simply cyber is correctly being name resoluted to 12.149. So if I cap my Etsy host, we see that that's already in there, right? So we got that like right there for 12.149 and simply cyber. So now we can use Bloodhound Python. And we'll go ahead, we'll put in our username along with our password here. We're going to put in the name server, the domain controller name, right? Or that domain name. And then there's a collection method. You could use different collection methods, right? So we could say that we only want to return just the domain controller, or, we only want to see users or groups or things like that. We're just going to say, hey, collect everything, collect all of it, right? So if we enter here, it'll go out and it's going to grab all those JSON files. We are also using Bloodhound Legacy right now, just so everyone knows. But Bloodhound Python can be used, and I show that in the course, for Bloodhound Community Edition. So if you only have Community Edition, you can use Bloodhound Legacy for that, right? So, or Bloodhound Python, excuse me, for that. So even though it just says Legacy, it's lying. All right, so we get all that information right. If I do ls-tech LA, we can see I got my JSON files right here. So now we need to start Bloodhound. Now, I can do a sudo neo4j, but I already have that running in the background. But sudo neo4j console, right? That's already running in the background. So I don't need to worry about that. So I can just type in Bloodhound, right? But if I do that, it's going to open up the Community Edition. So I want to open up the Legacy Edition, which I have saved over here. And when you hit enter on the Legacy Edition, you're going to get this weird GPU process isn't usable. So let's go ahead and do a tac no sandbox. And now all of a sudden it works just fine. Okay. So I'm logged into Bloodhound now, right? I've already set up Neo4j, everything like that. Everything's done with that. If you want to learn how to do that, it's within the course and everything. Just change path. But yep. So we can go ahead now and we can start to upload our data. Okay. So we're going to go over to upload data over here. And we're going to upload all those JSON files that we just got. So we'll say desktop, simply cyber. I think I did a lunch and learn. There we go. So once we upload these files, nothing's going to change in here, right? We see nothing, no difference. Okay, but now we can start typing in users. So we have alice.wonderland's password, right? We did assume breach. We have her password. Once we have a user, we can go ahead and we can right click on them and we can go to mark user as owned. So that'll help us out later on to know who we've already owned and things like that. Something else we can do is we can double left click on them and we can see different things, right? The overview, and it says like right here, reachable high value targets. Okay, if we click on that, we see this nice little graph pop up, right? That alice.wonderland can supposedly reach all these targets. That's not technically true. Okay, this is because alice.wonderland can PS remote into the domain controller. She can do that. She can win RM in. That doesn't technically mean that she can run DC sync on the Simply Cyber domain. Okay, that's not how that works. But Bloodhound will say that you can do that whenever you have some type of remoting into the domain controller. From there, right, if we scroll down, we can see these outbound object controls. We'll see that we have 9 of them, these transient object controls, but nothing really useful, right? So we're a member of floor, domain users, yep. Remote management, yep, we know that. And then performance log users, okay? But there's nothing really in here that's useful to us like right now. So let's go ahead and let's start to use Bloodhound for what it's made for, right? So we'll go to analysis and we can find all domain admins. We can start to map out trust and everything. So we see all of our domain admins here, right? Tony Stark, Barry Allen, Peter Parker, Jerry Cantrell, James Bond, then obviously administrator. So it looks like anyone that's part of the IT group is also a member of domain admins. So that's good information to know for later on. We can also find principals with DC Sync, right, that there are any, okay? Mostly it's just going to be domain admins and then obviously the IT group, like right there, right? And then we can list out Kerber roastable accounts. Now, if you don't know what Kerber roasting is, that's when you have a service account, such as these two, like right here, MS SQL service and HTTP service. You have a service account, and you can actually request the ticket granting ticket for that service account. And within that ticket granting ticket is that user's hash. Okay, and you can do that with just any user can request a ticket for a service account. That's how service tickets work, right? So let's go ahead and let's see how to do that, because we don't really have much with Alice Not Wonderland there. So we'll hop back over here. And since anyone can request a ticket, this is actually very difficult to defend against, because this is what service accounts do, right? So you want to know who's requesting tickets, when they're requesting tickets, things like that. And this can become very hard to start to defend against, because like I said, that is a normal process of Active Directory. So we see like right here that we do have this HTTP service, and the service principal name is HTTP service and MS SQL service, right? We can see that like right there. Now, if we do attack request, we drop out their hashes. So this is their KRB5 TGS hashes. And one of the things we always say is, because any user is able to do this, like right here, the service account's passwords need to be extremely strong, random characters. They shouldn't be a keyboard block or something easy to remember. All right, they should be pretty much impossible to remember, and you have to go to a file to type it in every single time, or some of that. You have to go to some type of password thing to be able to type it in, things like that, right? Obviously not a file in the share. That's just negates exactly what we're trying to stop here, right? So if we take those and we echo that into hash.text, we can go ahead and we can use John the Ripper or Hashcat, and we can try to crack those passwords, right? So we'll use user share wordless rocky.txt. So we're going to try to crack the hash and see if we can find the password within there. All right, we'll enter there. But we can see that we did crack it. We got two that are cracked, right? So most likely it's for both of these, MS SQL service and HTTP service. So it looks like they both have the same exact password of management 2005. So obviously a really weak password, cracked super quickly, things that you do not want to do, right? So let's go ahead and now utilize those passwords like right there, make sure that we can actually log in. So we'll say simply .cyber, attack U, and we'll say HTTP service, attack P, and we'll say management 2005. Right, yep, we can log in, we get that plus sign. Okay, cool. And we'll try the same thing with MS SQL service. And yep, so we get that also. So now we know the MS SQL service and HTTP service, we know their password, right? So we now have service accounts. Usually normal network service accounts have really high privileges. Within this network, they do not, because that's part of the course is actually cracking a TGT like that. So I didn't want to make them, domain admins, and the course is finished, after one lesson. So let's go ahead and grab that MS SQL service. We can enter there. We could right click on that person now, and we can say mark user as owned, right? If we double click on them, we can now see that we have an outbound object control. We have a first degree object control, and we also have this transitive object control, right? So we have this first degree object control where MS SQL service has right owner over HTTP service, right? Who we also own technically. So we can mark them as owned also. But let's go ahead and let's see what this transitive object control shows us. So this transitive object control states that MS SQL service has right owner over HTTP service, who has force change password over Bruce Wayne, who has generic all over Harley Quinn. Okay, well, that's pretty good information, right, to know. Let's go ahead and see about HTTP service. Let's see if they can do anything. It looks like pretty much they're going to have the same exact type of path there, right? And then they go all the way up to Harley Quinn there, right? So now we know that we have a pretty good attack path, at least all the way up to Harley Quinn, right? So we know that we can get all the way there. We know that we can go ahead and we can do really whatever we want all the way up to that point, right? So let's go ahead and let's start to look at how can we do something, get up to Harley Quinn, and then maybe even be able to drop some hashes or some of that. We go ahead and click on her, see if she has anything. She doesn't really seem to have much here, right? And we'll actually go in and we're actually going to change her to actually have another DACL abuse, because within the course itself, that is it. You get up to Harley Quinn, then that's it. But we're going to make it a little bit better, right, for this like right here. So we'll do that once we get up to Harley Quinn there. So let's go ahead and we'll head back over to that MS SQL service account there. We'll double click on them. And then we can go back down and we can go to our transient object controls. And we have this right owner. So we can right click on right owner and go to help. Linux abuse. And there's a couple things we can do here, right? We have a targeted curb roast. Okay. We have an owner edit that we can also do with a DACL edit, because you have to think every single thing within Active Directory is an object. So we can change the ownership of that object. And we can also force change their password, right? Lastly, we can also do a shadow credentials attack. So we're going to, at first, we're going to do owner edit, because a couple of these you can do force change password with. That's not a big deal. So we're going to do an owner edit, right? So we'll grab that like right there. And let's go ahead and hop back over here. And we'll drop exactly what it says down, right? So what we have here is owner edit. We're going to do action of write. The owner, who I own, right? So the owner is going to be, let's see here, MS SQL service. The target, who is the victim, is going to be HTTP service. The domain, simply.cyber. Our user, MS SQL service, right? So we can actually make that owner able when we want to also. And then management 2005. But we can make this owner anyone that we want. We can make that owner Alice.Wonderland if we want to. We can make it whoever we want to make it. Right? We enter, and this doesn't work. So what Bloodhound said would work doesn't. Well, why is that? Because Bloodhound, the tool, like I said, first off, we're using legacy, so it's an older tool. Secondly, these different DACL abuses, those tools get updated. So instead of owner, we actually do new owner. So if we actually back up, and we go to new owner, then all of a sudden, look at that. Okay, the owner SID has been modified successfully, right? Awesome. So now we have, we're now an owner over the HTTP service account. So let's go ahead and hop back over to our Bloodhound, and we'll see what to do next. Now we're going to do our DACL abuse here, and we're going to give ourselves full control rights over that user, right? So if you are defending in a network, again, this is kind of hard to see because you have the DACL abuse in there. So you need to understand what you have in your network so you can defend against this before it ever even happens. So let's do an HTTP service, right? That's our target. And then our domain, username and password. So we can just go ahead and copy that from up here. We'll enter there, right? Principal SID not found in LDAP. Okay, well, that's a new one, right? So what it's saying is that the HTTP service account or MS SQL service account, they aren't found in LDAP. Well, that's not really good for us because that means that the user isn't on there supposedly, right? So now we have to start to look into how can we go and do this DACL edit, right? So what we could do, or what we could try to do at least, is we could say we could make our rights to be full control and do our principal. Oh, probably because I put a control user for principal. That was probably why. There we go. I'm sitting here like, what is going on? Okay, so let's go ahead and do an MS SQL service for our principal. That's our user that we're going to control over the target. So we have our DACL edit, action right, rights full control, our principal user, who we are. Who do we want to target? HTTP service with that simply cyber. Okay, and now we get the DACL modified successfully, right? So it also backs up that DACL, the old one, so you can actually put it back if you want to normal for cleanup purposes, right? But we now see DACL modified successfully. Once we modify that DACL, we can now run a target curb roast or force change password. Okay, let's go ahead and we're going to do that targeted curb roast. We know it's going to work because we already curb roasted this account, but just show how this works. So we're just now force changing everyone's password here. We'll go ahead and we'll say our domain, simply.cyber, our user, who is going to be HTTP, or excuse me, MS SQL service, right? And then the password, right? So the password for MS SQL service is going to be management 2005. Okay. And now we see this HTTP service account like right here, right? So we just targeted Kerberos in that account. So we can now echo that into hash.text. And then use John again, hash.text, rocky.text, and we should get same password management 2005 back again. Make sure we're not missing anything in chat over here. All right, cool. All right, so now that we have that, let's go ahead and now we can move on to that HTTP service account, right? So knowing that MS SQL service has write over HTTP service, you could start to kind of create different things for your SIEM to look at, right? You can try to see, hey, is someone trying to change the password for it? Are we changing ownership properties of it? Have we changed the DACL property of it? Anything like that, right? Is anyone trying to do that over this account? Because even though he has write owner MS SQL service, doesn't technically mean they should be doing that. And then finally being able to remove that write owner from MS SQL service to HTTP service is what you really want to do. So now from HTTP service, we have a force change password to Bruce Wayne. So let's go ahead and right click that. We'll go to help. I'll go over to my Linux abuse, right? And the reason I didn't want to do the force change password last time is because we're going to do it this time, right? So what force change password allows us to do is it allows us to literally change the user's password. So our target user is going to be Bruce.Wayne, right? Our password for this is going to, we'll just put in whatever password we want. Now remember, once you do this, Bruce Wayne can no longer log in, right? So that is something you want to realize, especially if you're on a test doing this in real life. You want to obviously talk to someone beforehand and say, hey, this is what we found. This is what I can do with it. This is going to be the attack path. Can I run this? They'll give you a yep, because that user is going to be locked out, right? They're not going to know their password changed, right? So because you changed it. We'll do Simply Cyber, HTTP service, right? Their password, management 2005. And then lastly, the domain controller IP address, which we'll go ahead and we'll do that. And we'll just do a quick ping, Simply Cyber. There we go. And I'll put in that domain controller IP address. All right, so now the password is now changed. We don't get any feedback that's been changed. So let's go ahead and make sure. We'll do an XC SMB, simply.cyber, attack you, Bruce.Wayne. And we'll say PSN SSW0RD exclamation point. And yep, we get our login. So it sure did change. We can drop the shares out now if we want to, right? See if we can read any new shares or whatever else, but we can do whatever we want from here as Bruce Wayne and whatever Bruce Wayne is able to actually do or whatever attacks they're able to conduct and things like that. So let's go ahead and let's continue on. This is pretty simple so far, right? Nothing really hardcore. Okay. So now we own Bruce Wayne. So we'll right click and we will go ahead and we will mark user as owned. And now we have generic all over Harley Quinn. So we'll right click, we'll go to help and Linux abuse for that, right? So with generic all, okay, whenever you do a targeted Kerberos, let's say you aren't able to crack the password. Okay, so let's actually go over, we'll go into Bloodhound, we'll make her password something, hard or whatever, right? Okay, we'll say something along the lines of PowerShell. Then we'll say net user Harley.Quinn. And we'll make it that link right there. There we go. Okay. That's now her new password. All right. We're not cracking that anytime soon, right? So we can hop over here. We can do that targeted Kerberos. And we're going to see that, yep, we're going to get the hash back, but we can't really do much with it because we can't crack the password. So if we do a simply.cyber here, right, we go ahead and go forward, right, our attack you, we are going to do Bruce Wayne, and then Bruce Wayne's password is going to be the password that we perform, right, and there we go. Okay. So he went ahead and did that target Kerberos, and we can see now that Holly.Quinn is now in here, right? Because he could do that. He could do that one like right there. Okay. So now that we have her, we'll Control-Shift-C, all right? And if you're wondering what this is, so what happens whenever this runs is you're actually doing a pre-authentication not required. So you're actually making that user as rep roastable and then change them back again, back to a normal again. That's actually what's happening like right there. So let's go ahead and echo this into hash.text. And then we'll use hashcat this time for hash.text. And we'll say user share wordless rocky.text, right? And we're going to see very quickly, we're not going to be able to crack that hash like right there, right? The password needs to be within. Is there a case when C2 framework had to be used in a real pen test? Yes, I use it all the time. In a penetration test, yes, you could use sliver, things like that. In a red team test, you use it all the time, a red team test. The question was, is there a reason for C2 framework have to be used in a real pen test? During red team, that's really what you mainly use. During a penetration test, sliver, use things like that. Or if you're trying to run Mimikatz and throw it into a beacon or something like that, maybe getting a sliver shell back and running it like that. I wouldn't expect a penetration testing company that focuses in one area to buy Cobalt Strike and go super hardcore with it and have these crazy things going on. I would expect that from red team organizations where they have 6, 7, 8 people working on one network and they're all trying to stay hidden and things like that. So hopefully that answers questions. But yes, it can be used in a real pen test. Definitely use sliver before. And definitely had to just straight up just use PowerShell commands and things like that and not trigger any alarm, stuff like that during penetration tests before. All right, so we see that hashcat is exhausted, right? So we can't crack this password, right? That password needs to be within the file that's used to crack it, right? It's not magic. We're not doing magic stuff here, right? We're still just trying to crack a password. So from here, we technically don't need to crack their password. And this is right where blue team's job gets really hard because you don't really get alarms for this because it's exactly what Active Directory does, right? So this is right where you start to have to look into, okay, does this user normally do these certain things, right? And there are tools out there that look at how users do things, how users react to different things, stuff like that. There are tools out there that do that. And this is right where those tools start to come into play, right? And just relying solely on logs, you're not really going to see much with this, right? But what we can do is we can do something called shadow credentials, okay? And we can use something called PyWhisker to be able to do this. Now, PyWhisker, you do need 2 other tools with this. You're going to need your tgt pkinit.py and getnthash.py. You are going to need those 2 tools right there, okay? So once we do this is actually going to take a little bit longer, but what we're going to do is we're going to grab the PFX format. Okay, we're going to use a PFX file and we're going to try to attack them and grab a PFX file. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's start to look at how we can do this. So very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just grab PyWhisker's documentation here, right? So I do Control-Shift-V. Okay, I have it already in my path, PyWhisker.py. So if I echo my path, I have it within home Kelly .local bin right here. I have it in there. So PyWhisker.py is already in there, so that's why I don't need to call for Python, things like that, right? And then I'm going to do attack D, simply cyber. Attack U, what owner do I own? Okay, that's what user do I own like right now, right? Who am I trying to conduct this attack with, right? And I'm trying to conduct that attack with Bruce.Wayne, right? Their password, we know their password because we changed it, right? There we go. Okay, now who am I conducting this attack against? User 2, which is Harley.Quinn. All right, we can just get rid of file name over here. We say attack action add, we can hit enter. Now we're going to get this random numbers and letters, random characters, .pfx file with a password, okay? I know it says password 4, okay? But you can, you Use your brain, figure that one out, right? Then we got a password there, right? And then we have must be used with password that. So now we have a PFX file with that password. Okay. We head back out to the internet again, over to our great little shutdown repo for PyWhisker Wiki here. We go ahead and we can use get-tgt, right? So we'll do our get-tgt. There we go. And now we're going to have to pass that cert, that PFX cert that we just got. Where we say R3, boom, .pfx. Okay. And if you have done certificate hacking before, or different certificate escalation pass, this may look kind of familiar to you with the cert PFX and everything. And then, using certify to authenticate, and then you drop a hash. Kind of doing the same thing here. We're going to be doing pretty close to the same thing, right? So we're going to say simply .cyber. And now we got user 2, right? So we're going to say harley.quinn. And then we're going to just make a Ccache file. So we'll say Harley Quinn Ccache. Okay. That Ccache, if I do an LSTAC LA now, we'll see is right here. Okay. So that Ccache file, we are going to export that to our KRB5. That is to allow for Kerberos to be used for authentication from Linux to Windows. So we can use Kerberos against itself, right? And we have yet to crack a password, right? We're not trying to crack anything here. So I have this key right here for mini Kerberos. I have this encryption key. So let's go ahead and let's head back over here. And we'll see that we're going to need that key, and we're going to do a get NT hash. So our objective in the end here is to actually grab the NT hash of that user. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll back up here, right? I'll delete all this. I'm going to put in my key there. Which, let me go ahead and move this up a little more so we don't really care about seeing that. There we go. I'll grab my key. I'll put in my domain, simply.cyber, and then my user is going to be Harley Quinn. Now we're good. This is going to fail. It's going to fail because we didn't set the environment variable for the KRB5 CNAME, right? So we have to do an export KRB5 CCNAME equals our Harley Quinn Ccache. Now we could also put it in that get NT hash.py like right there. We could also put it in that like right there and just say, hey, so we don't need to export it like across this whole thing, just that one time, but it doesn't really matter how we do it. We go ahead and enter here now, and we can see that we recovered a NT hash. Now what the user can do is they can utilize a pass the hash. Okay, so let's go ahead and do an NXT SMB like real quick on this guy. Let's do a tech shares. We can see first off that signing is true and SMB version 1 is false. That means we're using SMB version 2, which version 2 is now version 3, right? And signing is true. Now I've heard before, oh, you can't pass the hash if signing is true. That's not how it works. You can't NTLM relay, so you can't pass a net NTLM hash if signing is true. All right. When signing is false, you can pass a net NTLM hash, which is when you bring in net NTLM relay. All right. When you do an NTLM relay attack, that's when you can actually, that's like where signing has to be false. SMB can still be version 2, be version 3. That's the highest version around like right now. It can still be that, but signing has to be false. For pass the hash, it doesn't matter. So if I do simply.cyber, tag U, Harley.Quinn, tag H for a hash, we hit enter here, and we can see that we 100% can log in as Harley Quinn, utilizing her hash on that system, right? So we could try to do it with WinRM maybe, just because I've heard this so many times. All right, and it looks like Harley Quinn 100% can actually do a WinRM, right? So let's try it with like attack X, who am I? And let's see if we can actually run commands. Okay, so it doesn't like something. Zip argument 2 has less than one argument. Okay, so it doesn't like something on there. That's okay, right? So let's go ahead and let's do an evil WinRM. Attack I, simply.cyber, attack U, Harley.Quinn, attack H for a hash, right? And put her hash in there. And we are now, who am I / all, we are now Harley Quinn, and we can see that, yes, you can 100% pass the hash when signing is true, and SMB version 2 is on, things like that. I don't know where that ever came from. I don't know where that ever started. but you 100% can. Okay. So now we have this, right? Let's go ahead and hop back out over to Bloodhound. I'm actually going to go to the course also like real quick, and I'm going to copy and paste something just so I have the add DACL abuse thing in there. Actually, I may not even need to. May just be able to use my notepad like real quick, but nope, 100% need to do it that way. Might just be able to press up. Guys, do this. Okay, nope. All right, cool. So I'm going to head back out to the course like real quick. I'm going to copy something from that course. I'm going to drop it in there. It's going to take a couple seconds to actually run through it, right? We'll delete some stuff off of it, and then we'll just kind of go from there. So let me go head over to Simply Academy, right? I know you guys can't see this like right now. At least I don't believe you can. But yeah, it's just grab the domain controller information from the course there. So go and grab this information like real quick. Copy that. All right. If you guys have questions, just ask them. Ask them up. Does not bother me. All right. So we'll go ahead and Control V that. Right. I actually don't want to do that yet. I want to actually say notepad, test.txt or whatever. It doesn't really matter. Sure. We'll create a new file. I want to get rid of something in here because it's going to take forever to actually run. Right here. I want to get rid of that guy right there. Right. Go ahead and Control A, that. Go ahead and enter there. All right, cool. So now that's going to go ahead and run. And then we're just going to do another add DACL abuse. And we're just going to, there's a bunch of red. That's because 99% of the stuff's already in here, right? So we're going to do an add DACL abuse. And we're just going to run one more DACL abuse from Harley Quinn over into the IT guys. And then we can run our Bloodhound again. And we can see how that actually works like right there, right? Hopefully I'm not giving anyone a seizure with that, what I just did like right there. Sorry about that. But let me go ahead and grab that add DACL abuse. We'll just grab one for anyone here. Maybe another little right order there, because that's always a fun one. Right? Because now, think about it, all we have now is just Harley Quinn's hash. So now we have to run this with just Harley Quinn's hash. We don't have her password anymore, right? So let's go ahead and we'll say the target name is going to be, I don't know, we'll say Tony.Stark, right? He's not pretty sure in the IT group. Username we'll say is Harley.Quinn. Okay, so supposedly we successfully added right order for Harley Quinn on Tony Stark. Supposedly we did. That's what my little code says there. So we'll go ahead and we'll clear this and we'll run another DACL or another Bloodhound. So we go to database. Now we go ahead and clear that database. All right, cool. And let's go ahead and run Bloodhound Python again. We'll make a directory this time called Blood2, CD in there. And then we'll do our Bloodhound Python. Boom. You notice that it doesn't matter what user I use, right? Because we're just running it with, what is it? We're just running it with LDAP queries, right? And something else we could also do is we actually can run this by just using straight up LDAP queries. Okay. So we can go over to here, and this is just going to be a really quick deviation, a little side quest here, right? We got some time to do it. We'll CD into my tools directory. I'll CD into PowerSploit, Recon. All right. I have Power View right here. Okay. So I'm just going to start up a web server here, Python 3, TechM, HTTP server on port 80. I'm going to grab my IP address. All right. And what we're going to do is I'm going to head back over to my machine over here. And I'm just going to do a quick IEX, IWR, use basic parsing. This means invoke expression, invoke web request. Use basic parsing means that if Internet Explorer has never been started, go ahead and run it anyways, right? So if you ever get that thing where, oh, Internet Explorer has not been started for the first time, that's right where use basic parsing comes into play. Supposedly you don't need to use it anymore though. And we're going to go ahead and bring a little Power View onto this machine. All right, so we'll hit enter here. All right. And this script contains malicious content that has been blocked by your antivirus software. Oh no, right? That's just the worst. Okay. Well, if you are putting something into memory, and if you're not checking for this as a blue teamer, if you're not conducting AMSI bypasses and things like that, then shame on you. Okay. Go ahead and enter there, right? I'm going to set up an AMSI bypass at it. I'm going to do this again, and all of a sudden it works just fine. Right? Just a bunch of random characters. And now it works, right? So if you're not updating your different tools, if you don't have tools that can look in memory, things like that, then you need to start showing, hey, your your superiors there, your management people there, hey, we can just bypass this with literally random letters, numbers, and characters, right? We can bypass the AMSI and load things into memory, So this is a stop one. Oh, it's so much better than Python. All right. So now let's go ahead and let's do our, we got that on there, right? So now what we're going to do is we are going to go ahead and we are going to do a Bloodhound kind of thing by hand, right? So I'm going to grab this, but we're going to look at Harley.Quinn, right? So I'm taking Harley.Quinn, I'm converting her name to an SID, which every user has an SID. Okay, so if I hit enter here, now if I do an echo SID, right? This is her SID number. So she's number 1111. This is the domain, right? If this is like a 5XX, then it's going to be some type of administrator. Like I think it's 519. Don't quote me on this, but I think it's like 519 is enterprise or 512. 500 is straight up just local administrator, right? So that's what the SID means. So that does actually mean something. Okay. So we're just converting her name to an SID with Bob, and then we're going to use Power View, and we're going to do a get domain object ACL, right? So we go ahead and drop that in there. We get domain object ACL. We're going to resolve the GUIDs, the group user IDs, the identity of star. Then we're going to look for the security identifier for anything that's equal to the SID. So that, which is her, that we're sending across, right? We'll say enter there. And hopefully we see that she has some type of rights over somebody. And we do. Okay, we see some stuff in here, right? So we see that she has generic all over James Bond, and she also has right owner over Tony Stark. But that's weird, right? So if we go back over to, well, actually, no, that's not weird. Never mind. I was thinking of James Bond. I was like, that's weird because we go back over to here. No. So let's go to Harley Quinn and make sure that information is true. Remember, we're not going to see both of them. Oh, we still have to run this again, don't we? Or re-upload it, huh? So we're not going to see both of them, but let's go ahead and we'll see our desktop Simply Cyber. But we can see that we have both of those abuses right here, right? So with just running it with Power View, we can also see the different abuses. So if you change up your Active Directory rights, so if it's like self instead of add self, and Bloodhound's looking for add self and not just self, right? Things like that. You're not fooling anybody. Okay. We can just get on the machine and actually look, you're not really making it, some crazy thing where, oh my God, I would never thought that, right? We're logged in as the administrator. We just did it as another user. Any user that can get onto a machine can do an LDAP query and get it for another user. So we can put whatever name we want up here for our SID. You got your defender up and running. That's great. We just used a AMSI bypass to bypass it, right? So these are the different things we need to think about, bring it up to management, like, hey, this is why we need this, or this is why we need that. So let's go ahead and let's do our Bloodhound Python again. Did I already do this in Blood 2? Where am I here? CD in Launch, right? CD in Blood 2. Okay, I already did this. Cool. Forgot where I was. All right, then we'll go ahead and we'll upload this data again. All right, we got about 15 minutes left, so I could also stay a little bit later if we're allowed to. I don't know. Let me go and grab that data for you guys. All right, we see that domains is file as incompatible with the collector. That's okay. You'll get that every once in a while. Now we'll click on Harley Quinn, right? Let's go ahead and mark her as owned. Okay, and we do have her hash. First degree object controls are now going right owner to Tony Stark and generic all to James.Bond, right? So we now have a huge transient object control now, right? Why is that? That is because it looks like one of these people are a member of a group that we can utilize. It also looks like James Bond has add self to a group over here too. Right, so we got to kind of split this off like a little. Yep, he has add self to management group. And then we also have our right owner to Tony Stark from Harley Quinn, right? So there's our right owner to Tony Stark. And Tony Stark looks like he is a member of domain admins and also IT. So let's go ahead and right click there. We'll go to help, links abuse, and we can do our owner edit and everything like that again, right? And we could also try to do our shadow credentials. Okay. I'm just going to try to straight up do the shadow credentials, but we may have to do order edit and everything. And I'm just going to kind of move through it a little bit faster than what we did earlier, just because we just went through this, right? So let's go ahead and I'm just going to grab my whisker.py here. And remember, now we're using hashes, right? We don't know. I may not even know her hash anymore, in all honesty, because we got rid of it, huh? So let's go ahead and cd back, lstack LA, get nt hash. Boom. Hopefully we can do that. There we go. Echo that. I was about to say, I actually don't know her hash anymore. Echo that into Quinn hash.text, right? And then we can go ahead and we can start to conduct those attacks now. So now we just have our hash now. So now let's go ahead and grab it from here for our PFX file here and hop back over here. We'll go ahead and we'll do that. Our pywhisker3. Okay, so if we do pywhisker3.py, tac help, reptech ia hash, we can see that we can use a hash in this, right? So let's go ahead and try that. So we'll go ahead and we'll grab this again up here. That was for Tony Stark, right? We're going to put our hash in here. There we are. Just our NT hash. Now, whenever you have it like this, where it wants the LM and NT hash, what you can usually do is just put a colon in there. They're like that. If that doesn't work, go ahead and put a bunch of zeros in front of it so it's both the same length. Okay, our user 1, Harley.Quinn. And then lastly, simply cybered. Hopefully this works. We have no idea. Okay. Could not modify insufficient rights. Okay. That's because why? Because first we have to change our order edit. And we're going to do that utilizing our hashes, right? So we can do that with hash, right? So if we do an order edit, order edit.py, help reptech ia hash. Okay, we can see it. We can also put in attack hashes and do it there. So we can get rid of that, the attack hashes, put it in our hash. Whoops. Jeez Louise, there we go. Attack hashes, we can put our hash order over here, right? And we also remember that we have to do new owner for this guy, right? So we got to do new owner. So the new owner is going to be Harley.Quinn over Tony Stark, right? Our domain is going to be simply.cyber with a user of Harley.Quinn. Remember, we could put whatever user we want to in that new owner area. We could have put, let's say Alice.Wonderland because we know her password. We feel like it would be easier to use than trying to do it with hashes, right? As long as that user has right owner, we can put whoever we want in there, right? So let's go ahead and do our DACO edit now, because now this user now owns that other object, which is another user, right? They now own that person. So the principal is Harley Quinn. The target is going to be James Bond, or no, Tony Stark. Domain of Simply Cyber. Controlled user, Harley Quinn again. Okay, we should just have to do attack hashes, I believe, since all these tools are pretty much made to be the same. All right, could not modify insufficient rights. Okay, that's a new one for us. Harley Quinn, attack hashes, Simply Cyber, Tony Stark. So we have everything in here that we're supposed to have, right? But suppose we can't modify it, we have insufficient rights. Okay, well then, good thing we always have a fallback way of doing things. So let's go ahead and do our pass to hash now. So we can go ahead and do our pass to hash. And what we're going to do, our target user, Tony Stark. We could keep that as a new password. Sure, why not? Simply.cyber, Harley Quinn. Okay. The NT hash is going to be this link right here. I might need the LM hash in there. I don't remember. And then lastly, domain control IP address. Oh, wait, no, ping simply cyber. And hopefully this works. I was having some issues the other day where, like, after doing something like this, it wasn't allowing me to do certain things like that, like right there, actually. But let's go ahead and let's make sure that it's not just a hash here, and then we just don't have to put in a bunch of zeros in front of it, right? So I'm going to go to the Sublime text. That was say test, right? And this is actually one of the hashes that we used earlier. There we go. We'll go ahead and copy and save that, right? And let me go ahead and try that, like right there. Because I have had problems with this in the past where sometimes it just can't even anymore. Yep. So it's not allowing us to be able to do that with our pass the hash for the user 20 Stark to be able to change his password on the way Simply Cyber with Harley Quinn, even though we do have those rights. Remember earlier I said just because you have those rights, it doesn't really matter. And that's probably because we're not trying to do it over Tony Stark. We're trying to do it over James Bond. And did anyone say that in the chat? Nope. So let's go ahead. Let's look at James Bond and not Tony Stark for Harley Quinn here with our. Oh, we do have right owner. Never mind. Oh, okay. We did have right owner, so we should have been able to do it, but probably because we couldn't actually do a DACL edit like right there, it wasn't allowing us to do that portion like right there with our hash for Harley Quinn. So let's go ahead and try our generic all over James Bond, who's also a domain admin, right? We go ahead and try this like real quick. We can try to force change their password with our hash that we know, and we'll go ahead and this will be kind of like our last attempt, ditch effort, like right here, to see if we can do it. So we'll say james.bond, give them that new password right, simply.cyber, control user is harley.quinn. Actually, I could just did this like right here and just change that to James Bond, huh? So we'll say james.bond. All right. It's still we're getting access denied. Something going on with Harley Quinn. We don't know what it is. Some error here. I was actually getting this problem the other day also. Then all of a sudden it just worked again. I said, "Oh, okay." So it was kind of strange. It was very, very strange. Why it was doing that, I don't know, but I feel like it has something to do with the MD4 wrapper that's working on things nowadays. With this like right here, I feel like it has something to do with that nowadays. Because I've got this problem a couple times now, and then sometimes it works just fine again. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm actually going to change Harley Quinn's password, and we're going to see, if that fixes it. Harley.Quinn.
Hey, Ryan, just giving you a heads up of a 7-minute warning.
All right, thank you very much. So we'll go ahead. We'll try this like real quick, and from here we'll see, if it works or not. If not, we'll go ahead. We'll log in as Tony Stark, and we'll do our DC sync there at the end. But just like I said in the beginning, just because it says it's vulnerable doesn't technically mean that it is. You have to check it. Because supposedly at the very beginning, Alice.Wonderland can get right in, right? So we'll do simply.cyber. We'll say Harley Quinn. Maybe it's just Harley Quinn. Maybe it's just that user. And then we'll go ahead. We'll throw that domain controller IP address. We'll see what happens with that. Yep, still gets that access denied for James Bond, even though supposedly we can do it according to our Bloodhound data here, right? We have generic all over James.Bond, but we're still not able to run those different attacks, right? We may be able to try a targeted Kerberos, but we try our force change password, that didn't work. We may be able to try our shadow credentials attacks, a lot of things that we could try to do. But just because it says it's vulnerable, like I said, doesn't mean it's actually vulnerable. So let's just go ahead and just to finish this kind of out, we'll do a net group IT, add Harley.Quinn. And now that she's within that IT group, so if I do a net group Harley.Quinn, right? Or net user Harley.Quinn, we'll see that she's in that IT group. It says she's in the IT group. What we could do is a DC sync, right? So if we actually look at the IT group here, we say IT, right? IT, like right here, they have group delegate controls of 101, then we have 103 because they are a member of the domain admin group who can do whatever they want. So supposedly what should be able to happen now is we should be able to finally do a secrets dump, simply.cyber/Harley.Quinn with the password that she has, right? Let me make sure that I have that going the right way since we got about 3 minutes, I think, left. Yep. So we'll go ahead, we'll change that out. And then from here, we can say, there we go. Right, put in her password, hit enter there. We're still getting problems with this person, huh? For some reason it doesn't like to see these guys like right here. Man, I think it's just not happy that we're doing things, huh? Because right now it's saying that's trying to connect to there. I don't know why, but that would be how we do it. Let's try it with @simply.cyber. But just seems like maybe don't know what's going on. There we go. Okay. So there we go. So now we can drop down every single user's hash there. That's on that domain controller. So that is pretty much DACL abuses, things like that. I don't know. That was weird, TJ Williams, that did that also. But also the different things that were happening was weird also. But that happens in real life networks. So, it's just something that we just have to do, So.
Awesome. Round of applause to you, Ryan. That was even going through some trials and tribulations trying to get this work. This actually shows you, ladies and gentlemen, someone who has years of experience to be able to pivot, try to figure out what's going on. And that's what the shows between a novice and an expert in the red team engagement. So, when you're looking at stuff, look at Ryan and people like him that are able to quickly try to recover and be able to do that. Because again, it does show the experience in here. While we have a few moments real quick, I do want to bring up two quick questions from you, from Bashar, and I always butcher names. Your hacking Active Directory course is nice, but I'm having issues with the network for both BC and or for DC and internal DC. I think the user is, talking pretty much about host names and things of that nature, being able to route that traffic.
Yeah, so pretty much the DC should have two interfaces on it. You should have an external interface that could reach the Kali machine, then an internal interface that could reach the other computer, that internal DC machine that you made. The internal DC should just have one interface on it, and that should only be that internal machine itself, and that's it. So the biggest problem that people seem to have with that is actually creating the other network on the DC, and then what interface they want to put it on. So make sure that whenever you do an IP config, both of those machines fall within the same /24 network.
Awesome. From ASD, is there a case when C2 framework has to be used with their old pen test?
So I kind of hit on this when we were going through. If you're using C2 frameworks, a lot of times you're doing red teaming or something like that. So you're going to be doing something where you have TTPs, or you have adversary simulations, things like that. And you're trying to stay under the radar, right? You're trying to send things through beacons and stuff like that. So it's not actually being written to disk, and, hopefully the blue team, hopefully they don't see it, but hopefully they actually do, right? Well, the good guys hope that the blue team does actually catch it. So we look at that for a C2 framework. Times that I've seen it used for C2 frameworks for just regular pen testing, things like that, and not red teaming, is mostly you're going to use something like Sliver. And it's to be able to, like, if you have to run Mimikatz or something like that, and you can't do an invoke Mimikatz. So you can send Mimikatz through the BOF file there. So you can send it through your beacon file and run it on the machine without setting off alarms that, hey, Mimikatz has just entered the chat, so things like that. That's the times I see it working. And also during, kind of not, this doesn't really go along with the C2, but it kind of does, kind of doesn't. But also when you're doing phishing campaigns, because you have to put in that CDN, right? So if you guys put in that CDN, so it's in the whole other network, so that whenever they try to trace it back, it hits, AWS. Well, the AWS is good traffic, right? That's good stuff. And it's not hitting your endpoint. That's what you want them to see. So that's a whole other reason to use the C2, is to be able to have it go up and through like that.
Absolutely. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if y'all got value from this, please go out and share it. Please leave a like and a comment down below. Tell us what you found great. If there's anything that you didn't like about it, let us know as well, because we are always trying to improve this to make sure it's more valuable to you and everybody else who comes across the Simply Cyber channel. And with that, we'll see y'all next time. Thanks again so much, Ryan, for coming on and showcasing one of the episodes or one of the courses or the lessons in the course, so that way people get a better understanding of what to expect when they sign up for this.
That was
Until
awesome.
next time.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Until next time, everybody, stay curious.
Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed that content. Keep the cybersecurity train going by connecting with the other Simply Cyber community resources. We have the Discord server that's lively and always keeps the conversation going. You can connect with me directly on LinkedIn. And also every single weekday morning on the Simply Cyber channel, we're doing live daily cyber threat briefings, 8 a.m. Eastern time, as well as Thursday at 4:30 p.m. We're doing live stream interviews with industry experts, and we produce videos that we push out every Wednesday morning. I'm Jerry from Simply Cyber. I hope you enjoyed the content, and we'll see you in the next one.